Well, last night on the Connors, we find out that Roseanne Connor, i.e. Roseanne Barr, they decided to kill off her character with an opioid overdose. Roseanne herself, the real Roseanne, was not happy about that. She expressed grievances, but apparently a lot of people were not happy about it. I don't see the problem. I thought it was great. I thought it was perfectly in keeping with the things this show does well. I thought it was fine. What about you? 663-1270. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270 and SuperTalk1270.com. Good to be back behind the AM microphone, talking about the burning issues of the day. So last night, the Connors, the new Roseanne-free version of the Roseanne show, Roseanne 2.0, whatever. They had the premiere, the first of the post-Roseanne era. And there was a lot of speculation, of course, as to how they were going to deal with the absence of the character of Roseanne Connor. And a lot of people had a pretty good idea what was going to happen. We all heard through the grapevine, social media, that they were going to kill her off with a drug overdose. And it turns out that's exactly what they did. The show opted to write off her character with an opioid overdose. Here's a clip from the show.
I just got a call from a friend in the coroner's office. The autopsy found that it wasn't a heart attack. Roseanne OD'd on opioids.
Not possible. When we knew she had a problem, she was only on pain pills for 2 days after surgery. Then it was just ibuprofen. It's got to be wrong.
Well, I wish it was, but they think that she must have taken the pills right before bed, and with her health issues, it was enough to stop her breathing.
Now, that was Jackie, Laurie Metcalf, the actress, talking to Dan, John Goodman, about the coroner's report, and they took off from there with it. Roseanne Barr, real Roseanne, said she would not watch the premiere, but shortly after the show premiered last night, she did have some things to say. The whole thing of the opioid overdose did not go over well with Roseanne or her close friend and sometimes spokesperson, Rabbi Shmuley Botik. That's his that's a name, not a joke. I'm not making a joke there. Rabbi Shmuley's what they call him. He's a talk show host, too. He talks about cultural issues and whatever. Anyway, the two of them issued a joint statement saying, quote, "We regret that ABC chose to cancel Roseanne by killing off the Roseanne Connor character. That it was done through an opioid overdose lent an unnecessary, grim, and morbid dimension to an otherwise happy family show. This was a choice the network did not have to make." All right, a couple of things here that I need to point out. Number one, I don't think anybody who's ever watched the Roseanne show on even a semi-regular basis would call it a happy family show. All right? Now, that's not necessarily a put-down, but the point is it was and apparently will continue to be a show that is willing to address these kind of hard, uncomfortable issues. It's always been that kind of program. They do that on this show. And from what we saw last night, they intend to continue doing so. And it's one of the things that I think is a strength of the show. If you watch a show like this, if you like it, chances are one of the reasons you like it is because they don't flinch and they don't compromise in presenting takes on these very uncomfortable, dark, harsh issues. So when you say, well, it did seem a little dark and a little harsh, well, that's what this show is about. That's exactly what this show is supposed to be. That's how the show made its mark. That and the fact that John Goodman is just an extraordinary actor. The man is amazing. He's just a force of nature, but more on that later. People are saying they didn't have to kill her off. That he's a good left hand in the family. Leave it open to come back. But again, the very thing that made this work, in my opinion, was the fact that they didn't compromise on it. They didn't hold back. It was harsh, yes, it was uncompromising, but that is what makes a show like this work. Of course, Roseanne doesn't like it. Roseanne ain't dead. As she tweeted, I ain't dead, bitches. Well, no, Rosie, you're not dead, just your career. Okay, we'll see about that. But so last night, and apparently the show did pretty well. They had like a 10 million people tuning in, which is about par for the course for what the show's been doing lately. Although they didn't have as many people tuning in, apparently, as they did for the premiere of the show earlier, a few months ago, when they first decided to bring the show back. So it remains to be seen how long it's going to hang around. It's not a show that I watch on a regular basis, but of course, it being the news event that it is, my wife and I decided to check it out last night. I mean, we had both seen the show before. And we watched it, and we both agreed, they handled it well. The whole idea that Dan Connor, John Goodman's character, he lost his wife, and without getting into a long, detailed description of what happened on the show, it came out that Roseanne got some of her drugs from another person who was addicted to pills. It was basically a pill thing. And it came out that Roseanne got her drugs from some other woman who was played by great actress Mary Steenburgen. Dan had some issues with that, as you would imagine. I thought they handled it very well, and I liked the way they handled the whole thing on the show. Some people didn't. I did. I'd like to get your take on it. Now that I've described it to you, you may have seen it, or if you haven't, I've described it to you. What about your take? Just shows in general that do this kind of thing, these kind of harsh, uncompromising ways of dealing with this kind of thing. Obviously, they closed the door on the idea of her ever coming back, supposedly, although, let's put it this way. If they found a way after this to bring her back, I would be very disappointed. I would be, it's typical TV, of course. The money's in it and they can work it out. They probably will. But if you remember, when the original Roseanne ended, in the show's finale, where one of the daughters got married, and Roseanne talked over the end about how Dan had died. Supposedly, they killed off Dan at the end of the original series, although they never showed it. And some people thought that was kind of hinky that they bring back Dan like it never happened. Well, they rationalized, well, it was just Roseanne's fantasy, blah, 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 whatever. But I'm telling you, if they bring back Roseanne, I've got two problems with that. Number one is that they're bringing back Roseanne. Number two, that they're bringing her back from the dead. Nonetheless, I liked the premiere. I liked the way they handled it. I like shows that do this kind of thing, that don't compromise. They'll kill off a character with the implied message, hopefully, that they're not going to bring her back. No compromise on this one. I liked it. I would like to get your take on it, how you felt about it. 663-9898.
Your mama.
That's right. I said your mama. If you didn't like the way they handled it.
Your mama.
Roseanne said, I didn't like the way they did it.
Right, I said your mama.
Well, that's kind of what I said. Roseanne and her friend, the nice rabbi fellow. Yeah, exactly. But I just think it's hysterical. Love to hear from you here, Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270. More conversation. Your calls coming up.
Right now it's 40.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. SuperTalk 1270.
Last night, the Connors, the new post-Roseanne version of Roseanne, is basically Roseanne. They killed her off with an opioid overdose. Now, I, for one, liked the way they handled the Roseanne thing. Very gutsy, very uncompromising. It's what you come to expect in a show, and this is one of the things this show has done well. So I don't know why some people have a problem with it. Roseanne has a problem with it, but who cares? You move on, Rosie. Because whether you like it or not, you're going to have to move on. You've moved on anyway. 663-1270. Jim Walsh here on SuperTalk 1270. A couple of comments about this over Facebook. Lissa writing, I did too. The show has been known for realistically dealing with these tough issues. Now, with that said, do I plan to watch every week? I don't know. By the way, next week they're bringing back David, who is, I think, the boyfriend or the husband, whatever, of Sarah Gilbert's character, played by the guy from Big Bang Theory. Maybe if they keep the nostalgia thing, and they're probably going to keep that going for a while, too, to kind of get people into the habit. But they did okay last night. They had like 10 million people tuning in, which is okay. For a show like that, it's okay. It's not going away anytime soon. Another comment here from Bill writing, didn't watch it the first time around in its original incarnation, and I have no plans to do so now. Were it not for the fact that the network used Carly Simon's anticipation for the commercials leading up to the reboot of the reboot, it wouldn't have registered at all. Thank you, Bill, although I notice you seem to have made a really big deal out of the fact that is not a big deal to you. Methinks the gentleman protesteth a bit too much, forsooth. Nonetheless, if you want to weigh in on this, I'd love to hear from you. 663-9898. Let me run the clip again here.
I just got a call from a friend in
Laurie
the coroner's
Metcalf.
office. The autopsy found that it wasn't a heart attack. Roseanne OD'd on opioids.
Not possible. When we knew she had a problem, she was only on pain pills for 2 days after surgery. Then it was just ibuprofen. It's got to be wrong.
Well, I wish it was, but they think that she must have taken the pills right before bed, and with her health issues, it was enough to stop her breathing.
There you go. Laurie Metcalf and John Goodman. John Goodman, to me, is just a force of nature. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. Just everything he's done, like with the Coen brothers, all those movies. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? He was great in that as the Cyclops guy. Got to go rent that movie if you've never seen it. Clooney is in it with him. It's fantastic. Yeah, somebody mentioned Blues Brothers 2000. Okay, not so much, but hell, I even liked I even liked John Goodman in the Flintstones, and that was a horrible movie. And people with their dirty feet walking around through the whole movie is kind of off-putting. But again, John Goodman, one of my favorites. And I thought he was fantastic last night. He doesn't look that great, though. He looks like a guy who lost a lot of weight in a hurry, which I understand is pretty much what happened. Because, at one point he was getting pretty big there. Words like morbidly and obese were attached to his name. So he lost all this weight. But he looks like a classic case of a guy who lost a lot of weight way too fast. You know what I mean? But his personality came through beautifully, as it always does, and I thought he handled it very, very well last night. Some people were not happy with it. I was. So deal with it. 663-9898. The other thing I wanted to say, let's face it. Here's the dirty little secret of Roseanne. The dirty little secret is that John Goodman has always been the main reason to watch that program. Let's face it, Roseanne is interesting as a person, but she's never been very likable or relatable to most people, unless they're relating to certain political views. But really, the heart and soul of that show has always been Dan Connor, John Goodman. It was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end, or at least until the show ends, finally, whenever it ends. John Goodman is the reason. He is the reason to watch that show. Always has been, in my not-so-humble opinion. You may think I'm full of beans. Fine. 663-1270. In case you're just tuning in, we're talking about the Connors last night, a cultural event, if you will. They decided to kill off the Roseanne in a typically non-compromising way, because this show has always been about these hard, non-compromising issues. With the possible one exception, there was the one thing about the daughter who was played by two different characters. What was that all about? Remember the original series? They had the one daughter, the blonde, and they had a different actress play her, and then the first one came back for the last couple of seasons. What the hell was that all about? I'm surprised they didn't try to play into that, saying that that was Rosie hallucinating, and she was addicted to pills, and so he was hallucinating that her daughter was different. Well, they could have done it. They probably would have gotten away with it if they had. So last night, it premiered, and Roseanne, Ms. Barr herself, the real person, she was not happy with it. She issued a statement with her friend Rabbi Shmuley. That's his real name. I'm not making a joke here. It's not one of my little cartoon characters from the FM show. No, there's a real guy named Rabbi Shmuley, who is Rosie's friend and sometimes spokesperson, and they issued a joint statement saying that they didn't like the way it was handled. Well, moo, boo, boo. And then later she tweeted, "I ain't dead, bitches." No, just your career. All right. 663-1270. I got to be sure I get the phone numbers right because, I do the morning show down the hall here on Cool 98.7 with the classic hits thing in the morning. And I tend to, if you're in radio and you work at more than one radio station at a time, it's one of the occupational hazards of the gig. You probably have similar issues if you've ever moonlighted. You're on one job and the old muscle memory kicks in and you're doing things a certain way, and then you suddenly realize you're doing them the way you're supposed to do them on the other job. It's hard for me to come up with a specific example outside of my own personal experience, which is I'm on this radio station, and part of me wants to say Cool 98.7, when in fact I'm on SuperTalk 1270. And it's just one of those issues that you have to deal with, especially when you get older. The old memory's a second thing to go. Nonetheless, some things I want to talk about in the remaining half hour. Thing that used to be very popular in middle America, along the white middle class, the mom community. Remember they used to have chickenpox parties? Remember that? The deal is, back when chickenpox was pretty much an inevitable way of life for families, kids would get it. I had it when I was 5 years old and got over it pretty quickly, but I did have it. And, of course, once you have it, you're supposedly immune to it, although you can have complications later in life like shingles or whatever. But there used to be a thing in some communities where the moms would all get together. If one of the kids caught chickenpox, then all the moms would get together and they would have a chickenpox party where they would all bring their kids to play with the kid with the chickenpox, to be exposed to the chickenpox, so they would all get the chickenpox and get it over with while they were young enough that it wouldn't be such a big issue. Because better, if you're going to have it, and it kind of makes sense, if you're going to have it, better to have it when you're really young. Mumps, same kind of deal. You don't want to have mumps, but if you're going to have mumps, it's better to have it when you're a child than when you're an adult, when all kinds of really awful complications can happen. But now we find out that chickenpox parties are making a comeback in some communities. Whether it's a religious thing or whether it's the anti-vaxxer crap, Jenny McCarthy and those idiots. There are families, communities in this country, in the 21st century, in a society where a chickenpox vaccine is a thing. It exists. It is available. But for some reason, people have chosen not to trust that, and they're actually going back to having chickenpox parties. Totally unnecessary. Totally ridiculous. And, we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes here. Oh, man, you believe some people. I couldn't agree more, sir. Yeah, we'll talk about it in just a few minutes here at 663-9898. Yeah. Jim Walsh, SuperTalk 1270, SuperTalk1270.com with more conversation. Your calls coming up.
Right now it's 40.
The Red River Farm Network. Ag News is here on SuperTalk 1270.
All right, here's a good question. Who gets the pet after a breakup? How do you decide who gets the pet? 663-1270. Well, the word on the street is that Ariana Grande, she's this hot singer, actress, person, whatever. She broke up with her husband, a guy named Pete Davidson. She gave back the ring, but she's keeping their pet pig, Piggy Smalls. They recently adopted this pet pig, and now there's apparently an issue. Now that they're splitting up and falling by the wayside, there's an issue apparently as to who's going to get to keep the pig. It never ceases to amaze me how some marriages that you think will last forever, that you think things will go happily ever after, and then suddenly things go sour. And all of a sudden, things get really super ugly over something really stupid and insignificant like this. Now, I know we all love our pets. My wife and I, we have 2 cats. And by the way, we have an arrangement. We don't have a prenup, but we do have kind of a verbal understanding that if it ever comes to that, basically, we agree that I get the car, she gets the cats. By the way, the car is a piece of crap, but as far as I'm concerned, she could have the car and the cats. But and I'm okay with that. I like the cats, but yeah, she can have the cats. My life will. I'll manage. I'll be able to go on with my life, but she will keep the kitties, and that's okay. That's okay. We worked it out. It came up in conversation. We worked it out that if it ever come to that, she gets the cats. I get the car. Although I may give her the car if I'm mad enough at her. Yeah, the car's a mess. You don't want me to start on the car, believe. I've got a car like the Three Stooges car. Goes down the street, leaving a little trail of nuts and bolts behind it. It's literally almost that bad. Who gets the pet after a breakup? 663-1270. Have you ever been caught in one of those pet custody battles, or somebody, and did it get ugly? Did it get ugly? Because I've seen it happen. How do you decide? Mr. and Mrs. Perfect Married American, they go by the wayside. Who gets to keep Petey the parakeet? Apparently some people have nothing better to do with their time than get worked up over stuff like this. All right, back to the anti-vaccine thing. I really got a burr in my saddle for these anti-vaccine people. I've got no sympathy for these people whatsoever. I do, however, have a lot of sympathy for their children, because a lot of these children, all of these children of these anti-vaxxers, they're being exposed to unnecessary risk, the possibility of illness, crippling in some cases, even an early death. And they're doing this because they listen to morons like Jenny McCarthy and that ilk. It amazes me, the anti-vaxxer movement, these are people who actually place medical advice from Jenny McCarthy before that of people of actual science, people with actual degrees from places like Harvard, Yale, Johns Hopkins. But no, we're going to listen to Jenny McCarthy tell us about the connection between... Well, add this to that whole pile of mess. Parents using Facebook groups now, that's the new twist on it, getting together via Facebook or social media to arrange play dates so that their kids can be exposed to chickenpox. The rationale being, again, better. If you're going to get chickenpox, better to get it when you're young, when the complications aren't as serious. But there's one big problem with this whole theory. There was a time when it seemed like a plausible thing to do. There was a time when I could understand people doing this, but here's the thing. We have a vaccine for chickenpox. So we're talking about people who actually arranged these play dates to expose their kids to chickenpox because they actually consider that to be a better option, a lesser evil, if you will, than actually vaccinating their kids and fearing these side effects, which practically nobody has ever experienced in history. And yeah, this is what people did back before vaccines. That's got to be the stupidest statement I've ever heard in my... And you hear that from these people. Well, you know, it's the way people used to do it. Yeah, people also used to die at the age of 30. There was a time not that long ago in our history when the average life expectancy of the average American was a hell of a lot lower than it is today. There was a time when the infant mortality rate or the child mortality rate was a lot higher than it is now. There was a time, and there are people alive today who can actually remember such a time. It's still the case in a lot of parts of the world where you have a lot of, if you're going to start a family, you have to have a lot of kids because you have to assume that a certain number of them are going to die before they get to age 10. So if you want to have a family to work the farm, or if you want to leave a legacy, you got to have a lot of kids because you can safely assume that some of them aren't going to make it anyway. I know, it's a terrible thing. But that's the way things were back in the day before we had vaccines. Yeah, that's what people did back before vaccines. People got very sick and they died from easily preventable diseases. Well, they're preventable now. But you know the issue here. And again, just remember, we're talking about people here who place more credence in Jenny McCarthy and Dr. Ooze on television than they do from an actual doctor. Somehow these clowns are credible. Well, the actual doctor is, he's in the pocket of Big Pharma. Yeah, he's part of the big medical conspiracy. Oh, shut up. Get your kid vaccinated. Don't be an idiot, all right? I mean, we can make jokes about culling the herd, people doing stupid things and getting themselves off. But when you're talking about people's children, it's just not funny. No, I'd like to know if you've heard about this. And, by the way, the absolute worst reason in the world to do this, the religious reasons. Well, God did not intend to put this vaccine in. Shut up. God. Chickenpox vaccine, it came out about 20 years ago, a little more than 20 years ago. And back before that, it was not that unusual for parents to expose their kids to the virus to build an early immunity. And you can argue the merits of that, but it's at least understandable. The philosophy was, well, this is a part of life, and we don't have a way of preventing it. So if they're going to get it, at least they should get it now and build up their immunity so they'll be good to go for the rest of their life, rather than get it later when, you're older and things can potentially, like mumps. When we mentioned mumps, if an adult gets a case of the mumps, it can be very serious. You can have some very serious long-term side effects, which I won't go into here. But anyway, back in the day, the parents used to have pox parties. Well, now they're doing it again. Social media pox parties. They're getting on Facebook, and they're saying, hey, my kid has chicken pox. Hey, everybody's bringing all their kids over, and they're exposing them. And the parents in these groups, they're willing to put their kids, they drive them 100 miles, even to a different state. Like in Bismarck, they drive out to, Billings, Montana somewhere, or Salt Lake City even. Why? To put their kids in the same room as an infected kid, which is fine, except for the fact that it'd be so much easier just to go get the damn shot right here. Half hour out of your day, get the shot. Oh, no, this is autism. Look, let me tell you, there is absolutely no credible connection between these vaccines and autism or anything else. We talked about this before. There was one guy who came up with this theory. He was vastly discredited. They studied his they studied his paper. They looked at it. They read it. They analyzed it, and they found that it was a bunch of hooey. But people still talk about this guy like he made some great discovery, like he was Louis Pasteur or something. And they rather believe this guy than somebody with an actual medical degree who's actually done the actual research. Because of whatever psychological need, they would rather choose to believe some idiot on television who's talking out of their ass as opposed to somebody who has actually done the scientific double-blind research. Boulder, Colorado is apparently a hotbed for this. Parents in Boulder organizing these parties to expose their hands to chickenpox. Let's see some comments here. They actually, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment passed this along to one of the big news operations in Colorado. And they actually made an effort. There are actually Facebook pages on Facebook where you can go if you want to do this, and they'll tell you where to go. You know, there's a kid in Bowman, Colorado, in South Park, Colorado, has got chicken pox. So go here and you can get your kid exposed. Hey, here's a better idea: get your kid the shot. You'll be half hour. You'll be done. You can get on with your life and not have to worry about it. Let's see. Hi, everyone. Here's an entry from one of those pages. Hi, everyone. I have been swamped with requests to have my daughter share chickenpox, and I can accommodate as many requests as possible. 17-year-old son just broke out in blisters yesterday. Okay, it gets a little graphic here, but and by the way, there's a bonus for sharing snacks out of the same bowl. So apparently some people are trying to make money off this deal. Yeah, great. Get your kid exposed to chickenpox, get him sick, and then invite all the other idiot parents to bring their poor defenseless kids into your house to get exposed unnecessarily so you can make a little money off the deal. You know, I'm not a religious person, but if I were, I'd have to think there's a special place in hell for people like that. Call it the Jenny McCarthy Ward. Yeah. Tired of this crap. 663-9898. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270. SuperTalk1270.com. More conversation. Your calls coming up.
Right now it's 46.
On Twitter, Facebook, online, and YouTube. SuperTalk1270.com.
All right, apropos of nothing here, since we're talking about family issues today, I want to talk about this, an issue that came up with the release of this Neil Armstrong movie, First Man. A big part of this movie is about the fact that Neil was going to the moon. Neil Armstrong went to the moon. He was the first guy on the moon. And his family, as you would imagine, had some issues with this. I want to talk about this because it does come up. You know, you talk about dream jobs and your family is, and the sacrifices your family may have to make for it. I'd like to hear your stories if that's happened to you. That kind of conflict between your family and your dream job. 663-1270. Jim Walsh here at SuperTalk 1270. Online, streaming, SuperTalk1270.com. You can also get the app called Radio Pup. You can hear all your favorite Town Square Media radio stations right there on your iPhone, on your smartphone, or even your ever-loving droid. Stick that baby in your pocket, and you're good to go. I understand the movie How to Do over the week, not that great apparently. Came in third, which is respectable, but Venom still number one, the comic book movie, which I don't get because everything I've heard about the movie, it's not very good. Number two was the new version of A Star is Born, which I hear is good if you're into that kind of thing. I'm not. All I can say is, I don't know how good an actress Lady Gaga is. It can't be any worse than the Streisand-Christopherson version. That was horrible. I saw that when it first came out. I was 21 years old. Star is Born with Streisand. Oh, man. Oh, God, was that. And I can't really comment on any of the other versions, the Judy Garland version. Haven't seen that one. But anyway. So number 3, First Man, it's the story of Neil Armstrong. What's interesting about this movie is it's not really a space movie. It's not like a Star Wars space jockey kind of movie. Not even Apollo 13, although Apollo 13 did kind of delve into some of these issues. The movie itself is more about the trip itself to the moon and back. But in the case of this Armstrong movie, First Man, much of the film is about Neil Armstrong and his family coming to terms with this job he has, which basically amounts to sitting on a big giant rocket that could conceivably blow up at any moment if things go wrong, and we all know they sometimes do, and they have. And they're going to send him to the moon. Hopefully he'll get back, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. In fact, I don't know how many folks know this, but the president of the United States at the time, it was Richard Nixon, he actually had one of his speechwriters, a guy named Bill Sapphire, draw up a speech that Nixon would give if for some reason something went wrong with that first moonshot. And Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, if something had happened to them and they had died on the moon or they'd been stranded or whatever, or they blew up on landing or crashed or whatever and died, Nixon had a speech ready to go that he was ready to give in case that happened, and how he would comment on it. I've seen copies. I've seen transcriptions of it. Obviously, he never had to give the speech, thankfully, but there have been versions of it. I remember when Challenger blew up and Reagan gave that speech that Peggy Noonan wrote. And it was very much along the same lines. Well, the country will move on. We'll continue into space, blah, 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 blah. We will honor the dead, so on and so forth. I think Reagan's speech is probably the gold standard for that kind of thing. It was a great speech, It was one of Ronnie's finer moments, along with Tear Down That Wall and We've Outlawed Russia. The bombing starts in 5 minutes. A longtime favorite of mine. Anyway, so Neil Armstrong, he's going to the moon, and there's an obvious understanding among anyone who's an adult that, it's a dangerous job. There's a possibility, it is there, that he might not be coming back. And there are some scenes in the movie where he's trying to explain this to his kids. And if the movie is accurate in this sense, apparently he didn't really do very well at explaining it to them, at least at first. There's a scene I saw. It's on YouTube. You can probably check it out for yourself. Just go to YouTube. And is YouTube working yet? And it was down for a while last night. Apparently, it was a big problem on their end. But if YouTube is working, go enter First Man into the box there and see some of the clips from the movie. Look for the clip where Neil is talking to his son about the trip, and the son basically comes right out and says, isn't this kind of dangerous? Isn't there a possibility that you might not be coming back alive? I mean, what happens if you die out there? And I don't know how accurate it is. There's probably an element of truth to it that the actor playing Neil Armstrong, he just kind of sits there and, like he doesn't really have a good answer for the kid, which is perfectly understandable. But a lot of people have dream jobs. A lot of people, they want to do certain things for a living. And there can be a conflict with the family. Either it's too dangerous. A lot of families of policemen have this issue. And you're going out every day, especially in the bigger city. Maybe not so much here. Although, of course, people have died in the line of duty in North Dakota. We know that all too well. There have been way too many stories of that. Again, it goes with the job. And if you're in a family where you've had to deal with this issue, I would love to hear about it. Send me a note or call me here at 663-1270 and tell me your particular story about your experience. You know who we haven't heard from about this Armstrong movie, and I find this particularly interesting in light of the fact that it's a guy who usually has an opinion about everything, and that's Buzz Aldrin, the other astronaut, the other guy who walked on the moon with Armstrong. Now, Neil Armstrong died about, 6 years ago. He passed away. He was 82. Buzz Aldrin is still around, and he usually manages to, anything related to space or trips to the moon or the Apollo missions or paying for the space program or people claiming it was faked. Usually, Buzz is one of those guys who usually has an opinion on that. For some strange reason, he hasn't really said much about this new movie about Armstrong. I don't know, maybe he's just, he doesn't want to embarrass the family or whatever, but the sons, Neil Armstrong's sons, his wife passed away about a year ago, I think, but his sons have talked about it quite a bit with the press, things they like about the movie, things they don't like about the movie, but we haven't heard too much from Buzz. I find that particularly intriguing. I mean, Buzz was that guy who threw a punch at that one moron who tried to claim that he never went to the moon, man. No, it was a fake. Remember that crap that came out about 10 years ago? Somebody claiming that it got this weird rumor came out that said that Stanley Kubrick, he used all the sets from 2001, the movie which he had just made, and he had a contract with the government, and he used those sets to shoot a fake version of the moon landing. Oh, man. We got some real sharp people in this society, but I guess you probably kind of figured that already. Anyway, what else do we want to touch on here? Story here. Not much time for it today. There's a movement started in Canada, apparently, where, of course, folks tend to be a lot more civilized about a lot of things. It's a movement trying to restore civility in politics. One meal at a time, a potluck dinner with political opposites, people from opposite sides of political issues, called Make America Dinner Again. No judging, no yelling, no interrupting, just civil conversation, and they even give you a safe word if you feel under attack. Do you think you could break bread with the enemy? Well, here's the thing. Somebody disagrees with your politics, that does not make them the enemy. Get over it. Your comments welcome. SuperTalk1270.com. Love to hear from you. Check out the SuperTalk Facebook page as well. Jim Walsh for SuperTalk 1270. Have a good one. Thanks for listening.